Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here. Good morning. We were nicely introduced, but to introduce ourselves again, we co-founded this community and we continue to manage this community. And also just want to shout out Vicky, who's in the audience, as another member of our team, who manages the international design and government community. We're going to do a very quick kind of about the community. Hopefully you're all aware of this, but in case you're not, the community is now 8 years old. And as Victor mentioned, we were here in the Netherlands in Rotterdam 6 years ago, collaborating with the User Needs First conference. So it's really exciting to be back, and I'm really excited for the next couple of days. Our community includes over 4,500 people from over 70 countries. It continues to grow year on year. And the people that are in the community are design-minded people working in government or with government in the public sector anywhere in the world. We started online in 2017, but we quickly wanted to get together face-to-face. This was our first conference in London in 2018. We had 200 people get together. And some of the people here have been attending some of our events since the beginning. Was anyone here at the London conference? Yeah, a couple. Nice. We've had so many events in so many different cities and countries since then. Most recently, skipping ahead, last year in October, we were in Helsinki, where we had the Helsinki International Conference, which was really fantastic to get together in person after a 5-year break of in-person gatherings. And we also welcomed many new people to the community then.
And one of the topics last year was we wanted to know what kind of like keeps us going. So, and as Victor just said, like power of community was a vital thing in that. Okay, that was the question last year, that's well recorded. And this year we wonder something else. We wonder how to make sure we can keep going. And there are reasons for that. So as you had, the topic we will be discussing in the next few minutes is protecting our practice, how to not let things get undone. There is this big monster of government. There are also like other monsters maybe around that that are influencing and like fighting that system in a different way. So the question is like, why are we talking about this in the first place? Why is this relevant? Because, well, quite a few things happened in the past few months and also years if we zoom out a little bit. So you might have read a few things that we will be mentioning in the next few minutes. Maybe you've been very much following the news about digital government and what happened. But we like to recap and we want to put this as well into a larger context. So it's worth looking back and then forward as well. Sorry, I have to bring things up that are kind of like more recent news. So among various other things, this is what happened. So what you can see here is a executive order with this title, establishing and implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency. So this was an executive order from President Trump issued on the first day of his second term in office. And you wonder, what about that, right? Like creating a new department for efficiency, well, that's not a problem per se. There might be even really good reasons to do that, but this was different. And that is why it is worth mentioning, because what followed in the next few days were a wave of mass firings of citizens and specifically digital teams, as this headline here from Bloomberg documents. So that's the short for the Department for Government Efficiency, begins firing workers at Federal IT Department. Because the so-called Department of Government Efficiency was not created as the other page just showed. It was another unit that was taken over, and that was in the United States DigitalService. So there was kind of like a hostile government unit takeover. And the people who were there, they had to go. And it was not just the United States DigitalService that was affected. There were other units, other digital units that were also deleted. So here, this is in Elon Musk's words, where he's describing how, this other unit, 18F, that was in charge, for example, of the United States web design system, was made go away. And they were in charge also like of really good work around text decoration services that were really helping people to do things that were very cumbersome for. One day in February, I was reading a blog post from that second unit, 18F, because it was summarizing work that we in German government were just about to do. And I shared that blog post with colleagues, and they were like responding to me and so like, doesn't see to either. And I was like, go it back to the blog post that I found so useful. And I got this. This site can't be reached. Check if there's a typo in 18f.gsa.gov. Actually, there was no typo. Instead, the unit, as Elon Musk promised, was deleted. And all of the blog posts, all of the high valuable reports, and as well user-centered guidance all gone. And that was not it. Here's another presidential action about ending racial and wasteful government DI programs and preferencing. So DI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this executive order went even further than this headline suggests, because it also covers DIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So people working on related programs, they were laid off in the weeks following. And that meant that also accessibility specialists were let go. Meant that practical guidance was deleted and the language on government websites was changed. Here's a list of words that the New York Times found that the Trump administration demanded to delete from government websites. So citizens were asked to no longer use these words. The list includes phrases like accessible, variance, diversity, inclusive, vulnerable populations, people-centered. But it also includes words like female, woman. They were also deleted from government websites on request of the Trump administration. What does that mean? Colleagues can no longer do their work, the work they were hired for, the work that is embedded and mentioned as well in government laws and acts of the parliament, essentially. It means that digital units were shut down and many infrastructures that were created around them were erased. And in addition to that, like previous work, has been getting undone and literally deleted. See the example with the blog post. This is shocking, but it is not the first time that some of these things have happened. Is there anyone in this room who remembers Mindlab? A few hands. Okay. So this is one of the units that was also all of a sudden shut down. That was the Danish government, and it was really the first government innovation lab that kind of like ever existed. It was founded in 2002, and it was special for a number of reasons. So it was a collaboration of different levels of government. They were kind of like pooling some resources. Mindlab was really creating a really fancy, cool space where people like to go. It was dramatically different from what other government departments in Denmark. And they experimented on a number of fronts. They were doing policy innovation, they were doing service delivery related projects, and they published excellent guidance on the internet for everyone to look at, to widely get referenced. And so there were a lot of people also like traveling from all over the world, from Singapore, people who went to Mindlab to like copy, read the things from that. But then all of a sudden they were closed in 2018. Here's an example from Australia. The Digital Transformation Agency there started strong in the mid-2010s, but then it lost its remit, the funding, the people, until it was just a shadow of itself. And this hardly talks about one of the most recent budget cuts. Still around, but they are no longer what they used to be. And then in April 2024, just last year, the Canadian colleagues received a sudden label that the Ontario DigitalService, one of the provinces, that would be restructured. And it was essentially its death, as this rapid ready post documents. And one more example where like some former colleagues of ours have been affected in New Zealand. There was a big slash of government in the healthcare sector. So there were some 1,100 roles only cut and some 130 plus projects stopped. And even though people asked like, how is that impacting proper healthcare delivery? Some people were surveyed, and they stated like 97% of the people that are working in the space are like, this is devastating. This is not good for the healthcare outcomes we want to achieve. So my argument given there were savings and efficiency. So one of the questions we have with that relation is,
Efficiency for what? So a lot of these organizations have been shut down for various reasons. So cost saving and efficiency, but last example, sometimes the reasons are political, sometimes funding and wider economic constraints, sometimes because they haven't shown the value that senior officials have expected. Something that we think a lot of us haven't focused on enough is really measuring the impact of our work and doing that in a way that is speaking in the terms that senior government officials are understanding and so that they care about and that they can see the impact in their values and in their kind of processes. And we think that's something that we can work on together. But we've been hearing this word efficiency a lot. We've heard it in the kind of intro in regards to the US government. It's also a key term in the UK government. And I'm sure it's also a term in some of your organizations as well. So I wanted to bring up this example. This is a speech on reform of the British state from last month, where the UK and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he is talking about public sector reform, and he says, "I don't just mean efficiency, I mean something else. It's allowing the state to operate at max power, reforming it so it's close to communities, tearing down the walls in Westminster, and inviting the British people in as partners in business of change." So it's linked to outcomes and aims and goals around reforming government so that it works better for the people. So some people have been asking me recently about the UK's public sector reform and civil service reform. They say, oh, it's like Doge. And I just simply say, no, it is not. I do think it is harmful to conflate the ambition of better public services and more effective government for working people with Doge. In the last couple of months, we've seen people laid off, as Martin described, like the 18F team. Those are people that are doing efficiency work. They're making things better. They're making the system better. They're working on processes. We're also seeing in the US examples that systems impacts and unintended consequences haven't really been considered. We're seeing decisions having been made only to be reversed and then made again. So it's very short-term thinking without long-term thinking. And in an interview with MSNBC, Ezra Klein, who's been speaking a lot about Doge, most like he's on a book tour, but he is a New York Times columnist and podcast host. And he had this really animated interview on MSNBC where he's kind of on a panel with hosts, and he is talking about efficiency for what? To what end? What are the goals of efficiency? He says, I want an efficiency towards an end, a vision for the future that imagines more for us, and a vision of the future that has innovations that we actually want. And I think it's useful to look at the UK again as an example. So these are the government missions. So the reform work that I quoted on the last slides, all of that is linked to milestones. So all of it is driving towards these 6 missions to make government work better and to do it efficiently and through the best use of taxpayer money. And these national missions are national. They're for the entire country to get behind. So not just government, wider public sector, including businesses, unions, and charities all pulling together. So this trend of digital innovation units closing, things being deleted, things disappearing, this has been happening over the last 7 years. It's not just recent. It's not just new. And I think the reality is that more of us in this room could be affected by this in the near future. which is why you want to talk about what we're calling fortifying our practices. Hopefully, this is where the talk is going to take a more positive and uplifting vibe. So we have created a new service gazette for this conference. It's somewhere in the country, kind of on its way here. But we asked Hillary Hartley to do the cover article. Hillary is the former CEO of the U.S. Digital Response. She was also a co-founder of AT&F, and she was the Chief Digital and Data Officer and Deputy Minister of the Ontario Public Service in Canada. So she has a lot of experience of things that have now closed. She's done incredible work, and she wrote this article called Digital Service Resilience, What Endures When Government Innovation Units Close. So we've pulled out things that she's described in her article as having staying power, and we've built on them in the next part of our talk. In addition to this, we also surveyed people from various countries who have been going through these shakeups. So either very, very current kind of examples of people in the US, but also from all of those kind of other examples and innovation units that we've described. So we have a couple quotes that we pulled through the talk. So the first thing that Hillary talks about and that we think is super important and key to fortifying our practices is growing and distributing talent. So government is still bringing this digital and design capability into government and still growing it. In the UK government, it was just announced, but that there is an ambition to grow the digital and data profession from 25,000 people to 50,000 people within the next 5 years. And we've also seen the Irish government, who are newer on their journey of bringing design into government, have recently started hiring designers. So it's great that we're bringing people in. We also need people to stay, and we need people to kind of move within the system. So move between teams and departments, countries, and from different parts of government. So from digital into policy. We wanted to share a personal example. So in 2021, the Central Digital and Data Office was created. So this was created out of the Government Digital Service, where Martin and I had the licking. So we got moved up to this new organization. And very quickly, it was apparent that user-centered design was not important to the organization. And we're not really able to do work. And we're essentially kind of told to go find other things to do. So that's what we did. We are part of this kind of distributed movement of moving our skills and finding where we can make change. So this is what we've been doing, in some cases moving countries. But we need to keep doing this. We need to spread the capability and build up other parts of the system. Another example we wanted to share is in Canada, they have something called the free agents. I'm also not going to do any French today. But this is an innovative approach to talent mobility within the government of Canada. So it is allowing pre-qualified federal employees, known as free agents, to support the government of Canada, to support different departments quickly and easily with their work. So it launched in 2016, and it's this new model of mobilizing a workforce. So kind of quickly, on demand, bringing people in with new skills that a team or department might not have, and putting them on short to long-term projects. So it helps keep these people, these kind of innovative people in the system, because they're able to kind of go out and seek and find interesting projects. But then it's also building capacity and capability within the system. Another example is Work for Germany. So this is a fellowship program in German government running since 2020. It's bringing experienced external private sector talent with a new work approach into federal departments for 6 months at a time. So for those 6 months, they work alongside a ministerial buddy on a tangible transformation project. And what's interesting is that after this, 43% of the fellows have decided to stay in government instead of returning to the private sector. So this is a way of bringing in new talent and skills, and then having people stay. And we've seen similar programs in the French government and the UK government, and I'm sure in many others as well. We also wanted to talk about kind of open learning and accessible learning. So apolitical is an example of this. It's a platform that has over 250,000 public servants on it from over 160 countries. So they have very wide reach, and they have courses on all sorts of things around working in government, especially in digital and design. Um, and these courses are developed kind of in partnership with academia and with government. So the UK government works with them. And it's this huge repository of learning that any public servant can log into and access. So it's this really great uh, opportunity for people to upskill and learn. And similarly, in Future Learn, this is an example of the UK government's Intro to Product Management course. So again, this is open. Anyone can take this. So it's really great for people who are looking to join government, who want to kind of understand how they work, what this role is, but also for people in government that may want to career change. This is a great first step for people to take to start skilling. So methods and practices that spread across countries, across organizations, are another example of fortify hair practice. So Martin showed the kind of deleted 18F page with all of those guides. They disappeared so quickly, and the international community was shocked and saying, "We need to get these back. We need to surface these and host them somewhere else." So they very quickly reappeared online on 18f.org. There's a new organization called Alt18F, short for alternative. So these guys are back online, and 18F and these guides, again, have been this really useful resource in the US for different levels of government. So from city and state level, as well as federal, but then these have also been used internationally, which is a way of learning and sharing. Another good example of this is digital ready legislation. So this is an example that has kind of been spread across countries. So we think the first country to do this was the Danish government. So they created this, I don't know what year, maybe, in the early 2020s. But this is ensuring that legislation uses plain language, as well as making sure that legislation can be applied to digital. So that digital is not an afterthought, and so that it's also supporting the new use of technologies. The German DigitalService, along with government partners, have implemented this as well. So they spoke to the Danish government, they learned from them and have adapted this. So since January 2023, all new laws have to be checked for digital readiness by undergoing a digital check. And then the UK version, so this is massively inspired by the German version. And again, it's making sure that policy and legislation are ready and kind of ready to be implemented effectively through modern digital delivery channels.
And talking about legislation, like that is something that also we see at that level, but also seeing overall kind of like chat infrastructure like baked into the system. So one of the features like baking things into the system in another way. The United States Digital Service and as well 18F, they've been creating things like this, login.gov, which is kind of like one account for all of government. So this is kind of like a common identity platform that is really making it very easy for citizens to authenticate and say who they are, proving who they are to a government service. So that's kind of like a shared infrastructure. Although all those government units in the US are no longer there, that infrastructure is there. It's built in and it will go away. Another thing that was first kind of like really sad to see, but then it took an interesting turn, is the Australian government design system. So I did mention that there is the DTA, the Digital Transformation Agency, that lost remit, lost funding, and that here's some news stories that talk about how people have to go away, how the money is lost, and the design system work could no longer be continued. But then it looked like no future everywhere, but then this work stopped for a moment, but luckily it was picked up by open community of designers, developers, accessibility specialists who were doing this kind of like as a voluntary activity. And they keep working with Australian government departments, and they basically created an alternative that is well maintained. It's called the Goals design system. Everybody can look it up. It's entirely open source for other government entities of different levels in Australia can build upon that as well. And it's a really great example of kind of like community taking on things when things don't have funding, maybe for a short while, maybe for a bit long term, but making sure like a thing like just die. Another example that traveled quite far is Radical Logifying. So that's the notification component of government as a platform approach. So this is really great for service to integrate when they want to send a text message or email and so on. And that is something that has been forked post-fall by Canadian colleagues that retain that, they created theirs at the Canadian Digital Service. And then the French came along, so like, oh, this looks good. We're gonna mix it all up, bit the things from the French, from the Canadians, bit from the Brits, and then making it work. So it's really a piece like this, but dark. But this is the GitHub of the French, and they code at the bottom that they're using code elements from both of the other countries. And then again, the US folks and as well as some folks in Germany have been trying to build upon all of that. So you see kind of like code base that has been picked up by others, and they made, in their specific context, make good use of that. The fourth area is like policy that is really harder to erase quickly. So we have a quote from Hillary on that as well, where she is saying, the more transformation efforts are tied to governance mechanisms rather than individual initiatives, the harder they are to unwind. And one thing we have seen in Germany that personally I was very, very lucky about is there was a new act to improve online access to administrative services that was enacted in Parliament last summer. And in that paragraph number 6, and it references quality standards for public services, among other things. And on the back of this law, the Ministry of Interior worked with the German sanitization body, the Dean, that usually works on ISO standards and things like that to define quality requirements for online service supporters for public administration. So they basically have been giving the mandate, Parliament have giving the mandate to have quality requirements in the law that are mandated. So this is really hard to make these things disappear again. So there is a specification that is out there now. It starts to be picked up by cities, by states in Germany that are putting this into their procurement frameworks and so on. Like it's really, really powerful that things go so deep, because the designer in a certain department, they can say, but I need to make it accessible. And then it gets kind of like overruled, or the budget moves or something, that if you have it ingrained in the law, that makes it quite powerful. Very similar thing we have seen in the province of Ontario, the Simpler, Faster Services Act, and it focuses, again, on making government service more user-friendly, more efficient, more accessible. Also, it's a really great name for legislation. And while the Ontario Digital Service is gone, this law is not. It's still there. So the people in other parts, that they can preference it, right? In other government units, they can build all the thing. So they continue really to rely on that. There's a quote from a colleague who also responded to our survey. He said this: in my space, I'm reminding that assured standards are our greatest levers for change to deliver our organizational goals and meet user needs. How the organizations does governance, sets goals, and measures progress is everything. So this from then comes the senior product manager at GS now. Okay, he was also going with us to this other split of unit, and they were unified. A fantastic, really, really old example comes from the UK. It is now 77 years old, and it is the Constitution of the National Health Service that was issued after the war in 48, and it has a specific phrase that talks about high quality care that is safe, effective and focused on patient experience. This was a phrase put their sentence years ago. And one of its directors, who we've met many years ago, Matt Atkow, he is asking himself as well in his week notes, essentially, how did I uphold the NHS constitution this week? So he has this as a reference point. It's so old, and he keeps building on that because it is ingrained into the organization's foundation. One more example is as well from the OECD. So there's a recommendation of the Council on UN-Centered Public Administration Services. These multinationals, like the OECD, they do really work because they are able to gather things that are popping up in various countries. They are summarizing that, and then so that other countries can pick it up as well. But they can find these things that we might know about, but they make it really visible, so other nations are able to pick it up. And this was referenced, for example, by the Irish government. They were directly building some live events work directly on these recommendations. So that's really something to point.
So our last section on fortifying our practices is around cross-sector partnerships. So from the survey that we've been mentioning, we asked people, what do you think is next for digital government units at different levels of government in our changing political landscape? And Dominic Campbell, who is a self-described public service obsessed entrepreneur type, he said that it feels like organic partnerships are coming together through groups like the Brecht Beck Center to focus on regional or these challenges, e.g. childcare services. So he was kind of referencing these partnerships, kind of not just government and public sector partnerships, but wider kind of people in the system, organizations in the system coming together towards shared goals like the UK government missions that I've described before. So the Beck Center, this is a really great example. They have the Digital Benefits Network. So this is a project of the Beck Center, whose full name is the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation, and it's at Georgetown University in the US. And it is supporting this fragmented system of benefits in the US. So it's multi-agency, but also multi-sector delivery of benefits. So they bring together people who design, deliver, and administer and use and influence public benefits, all with the effort to make the system better, to identify shared challenges and opportunities, and to amplify strategies to enable equitable and effective implementation. So it's this whole system collaborative approach. Someone else in the survey pointed us to this, which I wanted to reference. So this is a collaboration between multiple organizations, including the Beck Center and Georgetown University and the University of Michigan, as well as the U.S. Digital Response Team. I think that's all of them. But this is very new. So this is called Government Civic Tech Exit Interviews. So this is this multi effort to understand the experiences who were recently working in government digital roles in the U.S. So understanding the impacts that they had made, the challenges that they faced, the progress that they were making, the circumstances of their departure, and understanding what have they left behind, what are the unfinished projects, and it's bringing it all together and creating this body of evidence and learning that can hopefully catalyze future digital service efforts. Another example of this kind of partnership working is called the London Office of Technology and Innovation. It's often shortened to LOTI. This is a team of 10 people that all hosted at different London councils. And it's a membership organization. So the operations are funded through an annual subscription from the borough councils as well as grants. And it's this very small team that is facilitating conversations around common problems and opportunities of interest, and then is putting ideas really quickly into action and doing it across this local government system just within London. So it's providing this infrastructure for collaboration and innovation to happen, and it's very deliberate and sustained and systemic. And they've connected more than 1,500 colleagues working across digital tech, data, and innovation roles. They do that through communities of practice and through projects and events. Another German example. So in Germany, the Next community does really interesting work in a very special setup. So it's a registered society outside the government that has facilitated cross-government learning and exchange through communities. It's only open to public servants who could be represented as individuals or through their ministries or agencies. But what's interesting is that Next also writes opinionated white papers on certain topics like AI that is then feeding to members of parliament. So it's also a lobbying body, and it's registered through German's lobby register for parliament because it is informing MPs. So it's this community that's doing work kind of at these different layers of government. So influencing, facilitating and learning, and then influencing government. This is the final one, cultural shifts. There's lots of really nice examples, which are really just about, again, just kind of spreading information, spreading practice, spreading this movement of making better services outside of one team or outside of one organization. So this is the user research library that was set up by London's Hashi Council, and it's pooling user research insights with local government context. So anyone in local government could kind of go and view these insights. Another example is from Public Policy Lab in the US. So this is a platform that they built called the People Say, and it's a qualitative research platform featuring data from over 100 hours of interviews with older adults. It's them talking about their lives and policy issues that are most important to them. And it's open for anyone to use. So in the US government, if there are people who are no longer able to do user research at any level of government, they have this really great repository of insights that is very current and up to date. And I think this is another quite nerdy example to include, but I think this was a real moment for me that felt like the conversation around what we do and what we're talking about was becoming more mainstream. So maybe more stream in a still kind of geeky sphere, but mainstream nonetheless, because it was on the New York Times as Recline podcast. But Jen Palka spoke about her book called Recoding America, What Government is Failing in Digital Age and How They Can Do Better. And is having had this very live and current conversation about policy in digital and how to make progress. So we're seeing these conversations happening wider in the public sphere. Also referencing the Gazette again, and I think this is a nice kind of way to start wrapping up, is talking about imagining. So we've talked a lot about hard things that are happening. We've talked about lots of kind of good practices and days that we're able to share and things that we're able to embed in the system, but we also need to be able to imagine the future. And that's such a core skill of designers. If you went to design school, you probably did future and speculative design, but how often do you do that in your current work? Do you have the time for it? Do you have the space for it? Do you have leadership at any level kind of encourage you to do that? And one of our former colleagues, Kuba Bertwicki, who's a head design at GDS, wrote in the Gazette about how designers need to imagine more and they need to think about the future of their products and services, and that we're too stuck in the here and now. So we need to have this kind of creative and often fun part of our practice. But it's really about being ready with ideas for when opportunities arise that we can make things better.
And to conclude, this slide we always have in there. It says borderless challenges, exponential opportunities, because a lot of these things are not just in one place. They are things that we see here and there in a lot of countries and a lot of levels of government. So there's so many shared things and we can learn from each other and we can kind of like take these things and make them ours. So one question that I might be, is this for me? These people are here at the stage like talking about things that are not naturally what user-centered designers might be doing day to day. But we believe they should be thinking about that. So these activities are all very fundamental to make sure that our user-centered work keeps going. So, and our former boss, Down, put it recently like this. You can't see anything, but what it says there is sets design quiz. This is what the headline is, and listing a lot of different things. So service design is a conversation. Service design is an email, a new fund, a diagram, costing up delivery, applying for funding, making friends, making enemies, I'm sure. but also morale building. So services like can be so much in so many different moments. And when you try to fortify, everything contributes if you make it work. So the question is like, what can you do? So here are 5 very quick things. So first of all, you can document all of the work due in the open. It's very, very useful. Sometimes you might have to deal with your contact colleagues. We know that once you get through, it can just flow, right? And also measuring the value of the work. So especially if you start a new project, measure like what is there in the moment you get started, like how bad are things, and not just having a user journey map and showing some of the things, but like maybe getting someone in who has a bit of an economist mind and helps you like quantify that stuff. So there will be a talk touching as well a little bit from some digital service folks, touching a little bit on that. And there's more to say about that. And then also consider scalability. So how can some things that you're doing be scaled up? Like how can they kind of like be useful in larger and other contexts? Like have that in mind. You might not have a lot of extra time to do that, but like there are ways to kind of like bring this anchor in. So how can things be scaled? And then go beyond digital. So especially in the UK, in the US, we had these conversations where like we are not right if we are only working in kind of like the digital corner. We have to be very close to the policy teams. We have to be close to operations. This is how we get momentum. So we have to be in these other spaces, and then we're able to demonstrate value in a much broader sense. And then last but not least, like even if like in our cases where we're like, oh, this is not the right place anymore, like stay close. Like we have seen, I just had the conversation with Ali earlier. She's been leaving Finnish government, but she's been working now with the Prime Minister's office, and she keeps jumping around, like she works in other governments. So she's staying in this sphere and is doing really valuable work. So there are a lot of ways how you can, in your daily work, like do all of that. And this is where we say once more, like, do we dig a Z? We'll meet here in the afternoon and for you to pick up tomorrow. Continue the conversation on Slack, on social media, use all the hashtags. You can find even banners and always mention Gov design. And then we are very much looking forward to talking to you in the next few days. Thank you so much.